How's it going? In a little over a week, the next balance patch will be coming to Magic Arena's all digital formats, Alchemy, Historic, and Historic Brawl. Today, they released a list of balance changes they're going to be implementing in this patch. Let's dive into them and talk about what they may or may not mean. So, to start, just to show you the format, we're going to be going through the video. On the right here, we have the notes from Wizard of the Coast that tell us what is changing or being added to all of these cards. You can find the link to this in the video description down below. That being said, there's no picture of either the new card or the original card in this article. I assume the technology just isn't quite there yet for that. So I've got the original cards on the left side of our screen that we'll talk through. So keep in mind that the card you're seeing on the left side of your screen here is still the current iteration of the card, and it will be modified as described on the right. So to start here, we have Armed Scavenger, who's going to gain the static text equipment abilities you activate cost 1 less to activate, which might be enough to make this card playable. I think this card was kind of close in an aggressive shell overall, and this is a warrior. They're pushing a bunch of warrior cards in this segment, as you'll see, and a lot of the warriors have synergies with equipment, so the fact that this gives you equipments and now makes those equipments cheaper to utilize seems like it has some potential here. Up next, they're making some of these creatures more durable. I will say I really love the use of the ward mechanic more liberally to give these creatures more survivability against the plethora of spot removal that Magic tends to have, while not making them something obnoxious and oppressive like hexproof. So this will simply gain ward pay 2 life, which is very good inside of aggressive shells. You know, your opponent having to lose life to kill your creature with spot removal has a lot of upside. Similarly, another 2-drop here is gaining Ward 1. Ward 1 on a 2-drop is pretty reasonable because it means that a lot of the removal spells in the format are 2 mana, and they're going to have to trade tempo negative to take this card out. While there are some few pieces of red and black removal that are exactly 1 mana, a lot of the time this card will now be mana efficient even when it's removed from the board, which again could potentially push this towards being more playable. This is getting a stat boost from a 5/3 to a 5/4. It also will now work with reconfigure instead of just straight equipment, because with that reconfigure ability in Neo Kamigawa. So that's nice quality of life improvement working with cards and sets that were newer than when this came out. Expedition Supplier now triggers off humans and warriors. So they want this to not just be a human enabler, but a warrior enabler. And again, this conjuring up lots of utility knives plays into that equipment theme as well. I'm not 100% sure if a 3 mana 2/2, even with triggering off of enough, is going to be enough to see play, but it's definitely strictly better than it was before. Goma Fata Vanguard now counts warriors and equipments. When it attacks, target creature and opponent controls with power less than the number of warriors and equipments you control can't block this turn. This probably isn't playable still. It's definitely worse than the other two we saw above that gain ward and have some built-in protection. Cargan Intimidator. They compound the 1/1 and trample ability. So it just has 2 abilities now, and for 1 mana you give something 1/1 and trample. This was an aggressive card that already saw some play inside of red shells, and it's strictly better than it was before. Asterisk, I'm sure there's some edge case for giving tramples a negative. Go tell someone who cares. But yeah, this is an upgrade, and if there is a warrior in equipment deck, this will definitely be a staple of it. Cargan Warleader now has ward and gives other warriors ward. So this on curve off of those 2 mana warriors that we saw now that already added protection themselves. Remember, ward stack. So if you have that 2 mana warrior on 2, it has ward 1. This comes down, that now has ward 2. So protecting all of your threats as you curve out and making them bigger. This could maybe, I think if there's a warrior deck that's competitive, this is definitely going to be a part of it. Nahiri, Heir of the Ancients. -2. So the +1 is staying the same. The -2 grabs a warrior and an equipment card. So that's obviously strictly better than it was previously. And something that's interesting is, you know, we're going to have all of those reconfigure cards that are equipments as well. So if you build a deck that's got a lot of those and warriors in it, this could be down ticking to basically divination inside of your shell. And her down tick now counts warriors also. Something that's really noteworthy about her in general is that because this grabs warriors and equipments, and this now counts warriors instead of just equipment, you could just play this in a dedicated warriors deck as a piece of top end that has like probably a few smattering of equipments too that could just be useful, but you don't need to be all in on the equipment sub theme for this Nahiri to potentially be playable, which seems like it could be good. You know, creature decks like some kind of card advantage planeswalker like this at their top end. This one can be a removal spell in a pinch, but it also generates threats against control decks, so good flexibility there. Curving out warriors 1, 2, 3, or even 2, 3, it deals damage equal to twice the number. So if you have a warrior on 2, a warrior at 3, and then this on 4, you can down tick the deal 4 to something. So I think that seems like a sweet top end for warriors. Finally, plate armor. This is another one of those equipments that felt like it was really close, and they're just making it cost 2 from 3. +3/+3, and ward is no small amount of increase, so I expect this to definitely be playable if there is an equipment deck. The second archetype they are looking to push is Elves. We've got Tyvar Kel. Starting loyalty is now 4. Puts 2 1/1 counters on an elf. And then they put 2 1/1 counters on up to an elf. Untap it against Death Touch. This stays the same. Oh, this is interesting. So they're actually, I'm like trying to figure out what this is. This is some of the more interesting balance changes. So this is a side greed here, kinda. So I guess this technically takes the same number of turns to get to as prior, right? Because they're starting it at 4 now, and they're making the unite move here be -7 instead of -6. So you still get to this final ability in the same amount of turns after you play it, but it technically takes slightly more. Herald unites the elves, now mills 5 cards. So this makes this card a little bit more potent and powerful. If you don't currently have anything in your bin and you want to play this out, you'll be a lot more likely to hit a random elf or Tyvar in 5 cards than you will in 3. So strict upgrade there almost assuredly. Elderfang Ritualist now costs 2 and can return a Tyvar Kel from your graveyard to hand. Return target elf or Tyvar card from your graveyard to your hand. Neat. Okay, so like 3/1 for 2 is like a pretty good rate, and then this draws you a spell when it dies in most situations. Seems reasonable. Could be an okay grindy tool. Speaking of grindy tools, they're pulling what was one of the biggest drawbacks off of this card. Whenever another non-token elf or berserk you control dies, you draw a card and lose a life. So this now still doesn't count itself when it dies, but it counts your tokens. And when you get to play this alongside that other elf whose name is escaping me that makes a token whenever you have an elf hit the battlefield, this could really draw a meaningful number of cards off of that. So sweet, solid upgrade there as well. Canopy Tactician, just getting an extra stat line. Sure. Herald now looks at 7 cards. Herald has never been more primed to unite the elves, friends. He's gonna dig far deeper and unite many, many more elves or warriors or Tyvars. Solid upgrade for Herald here also. Turn target creature in graveyard to the battlefield. If it's an elf, you get to make some warriors. This probably isn't a card you're interested in playing still. Technically, strictly better than before, but doesn't really fit into the archetype of what I think you probably don't play. You probably play like a bunch of Herald Unites the Elves before you play this card, and Herald Unites the Elves, you probably don't want like more than 4 of that style of reanimate effect, I don't think. Thorn Mantle Striker now costs 4 mana. Enters the battlefield. Remove X counters from target permanent where X is the number of elves you control. Target creature gets -X for X is the number of elves you control. So this is almost a Flame Tongue Kavu. So counting, you're probably not going to have elf on 1 very consistently, but you play an elf on 2. You play another elf on 3 if it's a token maker, maybe you have a token. So it's going to give like -3 or -4 if you curve out okay. And the stat line's okay for a 4 drop. Like 4/3 for 5 is not great, but 4/3 for 4 is okay. Depending on if you want a ability to find a removal spell, this could maybe be okay. Elder Leaf Mentor now costs 3 and is a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you get a 1/1 Elf Warrior token. Okay, this actually works kind of okay with the card we looked at right before it, because this gives you 2 bodies on turn 3, which means you're going to get to minus for bigger. So maybe there's a better, more aggressive curve there by having your ability to go wide. Elven Bow is now pay 1 down from pay 2. So you could play this as a 2 mana, 2/3 with reach that then hangs out and can power up something else after the fact. Might be okay. Elder Hall now costs 4 from 5. This is probably still isn't worth playing compared to the other utility lands in the format, but maybe worth kicking the tires on a little bit. Entering tap's a pretty big deal when our creature lands enter untapped. Now costs 3 and is a better stat line. When it enters the battlefield, target creature blocks this turn is able. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, you may pay 2 life to draw a card. That's kind of interesting. I don't know if the increased stat line is really meaningful enough, but hey, if something died on your turn, you get to draw a card. I guess it's only your turn, so like if your opponent's killing your stuff on their turn, you don't get to draw. If the format really cares about creature combat and trading in combat frequently, this could maybe be an okay card at 3, but with the red-black decks that are currently popular that don't really play to the board a ton, I think this is probably not very good still. A couple of one-offs at the end here. Symmetry Sage is going to an 0/3 from an 0/2 and will now give 3 base power. Notable that this can target itself with these Magecraft triggers, but it can also target other things. So, you know, maybe there's worth revisiting a like blue-black Magecraft deck, giving Sedgemoor Witch tokens 3 attack seems potentially good. Maybe with the 3rd point of attack, this could do a better Delver impersonation in Historic finally. And finally, notably, you know, giving Dragon Rage Chandler base 3 power means it attacks as a 5/3. So if you have this and Darcy out and you play 2 spells, you get to attack for 8, which is a pretty good chunk of damage. Spell Satchel is going to pay 2 from 3. Every cast instant sorcery, put a book counter, remove 2 book counters, and pay 2 mana. This probably still isn't good enough. If you're not casting instant sorceries, it doesn't do anything, and you have to choose between. If this like made a colorless mana all the time, like maybe only for spells, it could be cool if it could like ramp you consistently, but this is probably still not good enough. And finally, chat, they gave me one of the things I've been asking for since even before Alchemy existed. This card will no longer enter the battlefield tapped, which is sweet. Not only for the idea of party decks, you know, trying to get a full party together to get a bonus, this could be color fixing for you, but this is also just now an untapped dual lands for clerics decks, rogues decks, warriors decks, and wizard decks. So, you know, maybe it's worth revisiting clerics with better mana. The warrior archetype got a bunch of upgrades in this patch, so we'll be able to use this as a way to fix mana in that. So, at any rate, I think I like overall what they're continuing to do with the directions of buffs in this format. I like that they're looking at archetypes that just obviously aren't constructed playable. We saw them do this with Venture successfully already. They're saying, hey, let's try and make the warrior equipment deck better. Hey, let's try and make the tribal elf deck better. Obviously, it's a little bit sad that these things are getting changed so close to rotation, but remember when these sets originally came out, alchemy wasn't a thing. I hope in the not too distant future, they start more aggressively boosting things up so we have longer time to play with these more powerful decks. Like, noteworthy, it's pretty obvious at this point that like ninjas and vehicles out of Kamigawa don't really seem like constructed playable archetypes in standard or alchemy, so I hope we see some cards in those archetypes get pushed in an upcoming balance patch. I will say that I am a little bit sad not to see any nerfs in this card update. Well, I think you could probably make an argument that, hey, Neo Kamigawa cards haven't been out long enough to justify nerfs. I think City Stalker Connoisseur is a card that I hope at the very least is on their radar. I'm going to Control F for that. Then City Stalker does not appear on this page anywhere. So I hope that card's on their radar. I think that could probably use a tone down for like the black mid-range decks that are kind of omnipresent in Historic. And there's a bunch of cards on the Historic ban list still for some reason. Come on, you made us have Teferi back in the format. Can we nerf and unban a bunch of other cards that just like probably are fine as is, but I'd take them back with nerfs? Free Winota! All right, Chip, I'll be back tomorrow live with more stuff on Twitch, but I wanted to record this because I know people are going to be asking tomorrow, and I wanted to have it as a command to link. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of these balance changes in the comments down below. Smash that like button, ring that bell, and do all the other crap YouTubers tell you to do. I don't know, Chip. I'm a Twitch streamer. All right, thanks for watching.